Good morning. I'm Andrew Jordan, and I wanted to read some Torah with you, starting with the first parasha of the Torah, the first section of the Torah. It begins, Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. Ve'haaretz haita tohu vabohu ve'choshech al panei tehom ve'ruach Elohim merahefet al panei hamayim. How to translate this text is quite the bit of a debate among medieval commentators. You can see below the JPS, Jewish Publication Society translation, when God began to create heaven and earth, the earth being unformed and void with darkness over the surface of the deep, and a wind from God sweeping over the water. However, the JPS translation might not be the best possible option. We're going to look at two medieval commentators to see how they think this should be translated. First, beginning with Rashi, perhaps the most well-known Jewish commentator. Rashi lived in medieval France in the 13th century. The very first word of the Torah is perhaps one of the most perplexing words to translate, Bereshit. The word begins with a preposition, which you might have heard translated as in the beginning. However, the preposition is not in the definite state, reading be instead of ba. Also, the word reshit is problematic, and we'll see also bara is problematic. The rest of the sentence is not overly complex. If we look over here at Rashi, we're going to see a bit of commentary. We're going to scroll down quite a bit and go down to the second comment, which is speaking about what we were just discussing, Bereshit bara, how to translate that. And we want to look over here. He's going to give a number of examples of where we see Reshit in the other parts of the Torah. And he makes an interesting comment here that this is not supposed to be a chronological type of statement, meaning something like first God created. There would be a word we could use to translate that and have that meaning, but that's not the word that's used, so it must mean something else, perhaps. And the next thing that he states is that this seems to be in the construct state, and the word reshit seems to always be in the construct state when it appears in the Torah. We can click and see some other examples that he mentions. And we'll turn on the Hebrew part to make sure we can see that. And so the first example that he points us to is Jeremiah 26:1, which over here we can see Bereshit Mamlchut. So here we have the beginning, and how they translated JPS is at the beginning of the reign of the king, etc. So we have here the same word Bereshit, translated differently in the JPS English, when God began to create at the beginning of the reign. So if this translation was to be consistent, we would have to say something like at the beginning, and then we'll see what the second word should mean in a second here. And so we can already see an inconsistency in the JPS translation across these two examples. Rashi also points us to over here, and we see the same word, reshit. Oops, we don't want to do that. And so we can see here they have actually translated it differently in the JPS. And so that would be here, which we have in the translated Rashi. We need to scroll down here. So the JPS says the mainstays of his kingdom were Babylon, etc., etc. The translated Rashi has the beginning, Reshit, of his kingdom. So we want to see this as something like the beginning of. That would be a more accurate translation. And Rashi then goes and states that we should probably translate this in this way to get to the second word, bara, which looks like a regular perfect tense is used in Hebrew, biblical Hebrew verb, meaning something like he shaped or he created, he fashioned, one of those words. So we want to, instead of translating it like that, we want to use a participle reading. So as you can see here, at the beginning of God's creating. And then Rashi is going to give us some examples of why he thinks that's the case by looking at other examples. For example, over here, Hosea 1:2, he tells us about this construct here, Tehilat Diber Adonai. So as it says here, when the Lord spoke, which we understand to mean at the beginning of God speaking. That would be a more rabbinic way of interpreting this. Over here, you can see they translated it quite differently. So that is Rashi. Let's close that and then go over here to Ibn Ezra, who is a Spanish commentator who ended up leaving Spain and ending up in England, I believe. And so he makes us a lot of similar comments, and he is noted for his grammatical insights into the Hebrew language in the Torah. So we can see that he begins right away and refers to other teachers, which you can see here in the notes that this is referring to grammarians. Here, Ibn Jannah, probably pronounced that way in Arabic lands. So here we can see that the letter bet over here, is superfluous. And we want to go back to Ibn Ezra. There we go. Okay. So this is superfluous. And if you click on the notes over in Sepharia, you can get quite a bit more detailed in your analysis of this. And so he's going to go and kind of give us a number of different examples and point to other texts, so we can look over here and see what he's talking about, which is he's comparing Bereshit to Ba Rishona in 13:4 over here, which is right here, Ba Rishona at first. And it's essentially saying that here that this is the bet, or the ba, in the definite state, is superfluous because Rishona already means at the beginning. And so if we scroll down a little bit, we'll see, and this is an important point, that if we were meant to be reading Bereshit this way, we would have Ba Reshit, but we don't have that. So we scroll down here, and I wanted to show you something, which is a little bit further down in the Ibn Ezra comments. And he points to some of the same kind of examples where we can see Reshit used in other contexts in the Torah, here in Devarim, Deuteronomy. And he was saying that the bet is a preposition, which we saw with Rashi translating it at the beginning of, which could be a possible solution to the translation issue that we have. And here it is. So I believe that that Bereshit is in the construct state, which is puts an agreement here between Rashi and Ibn Ezra. So we really want to be translating this as at the beginning, or in the beginning of the creating or shaping or forming, like we have over here in this example, Bereshit. We already saw this one, at the beginning of, which they translate in the JPS correctly over here. But don't do so over here. So that's what we want to do. And so now I want to go back and look at the original. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et ha'aretz, v'ha'aretz hayta tohu v'bohu, v'choshech al penei tahom, v'ruach Elohim merachefet al penei hamayim. And I really want to look at the the translation now, and eventually I'm going to read my own translation of how I think maybe we could translate this. But let's look instead of the commentaries. Let's go and look at the Targum, which is the Aramaic and other languages, as we'll see in a second. Translations of this, the most important ones would be the Onkelos translation. The other translations are less important. And then we're going to see here Rab Saadia Gaon, who was a Babylonian sage and Gaon, which means kind of like a leader, influential rabbi of his age, translated into Arabic, which isn't going to be important. So let's look at Onkelos here. And I'm going to just turn it on so we can see. How do I get it? Well, it's not cooperating with me, but so we'll kind of go back and forth. So this is an English translation of an Aramaic translation of the Hebrew original. So we're already kind of veering off the path, but it's important to look at this. So here they say, in the beginning, Elohim created the heavens and the earth in the Aramaic, which we can see here, Bekadmin bara Adonai Yat Shemaya ve'Yat Ara, which is what it's saying there. And if we look at the second one, we can see the what it has is it has the translation, and then it has in kind of in parentheses here comments that help explain what the text it means in Aramaic. And that's really what the Targum was meant to do, was meant to provide a rabbinic translation / commentary in Aramaic of the original Torah in Hebrew. So let's compare the Onkelos English with the JPS English over here. So we can see the earth was unformed and desolate, the earth being unformed and void, pretty similar, and there was darkness, and darkness was spread over the surface of the abyss, with darkness over the surface of the deep, pretty close, and the breath of, or from before Elohim, God, hovered or blew over the surface of the water. And we see here, and a wind from God swept, and a wind from God sweeping over the water. So there's a slight difference in how they've translated it here, which they're looking at this over here, which we can also see if we click on that in that way. We'll see that it pulls up the dictionary, which we were saying here, it's just sweeping. And what did the other one have? It let's go back here, and it was saying hovered. So we're wondering how to translate these words. So we can pull up any of the words if you double click on it. Sometimes it does that. Maybe I have to do it like this. There we go. Okay, so it's going to tell us the different forms that we have here, and we know to look down here to the PL construction, and we can see some comparative linguistic stuff down here, which is, now it's a little bigger. That's kind of helpful. So we can see that it is move gently, okay, in Syriac, which is related to Aramaic and Hebrew, and it's going to tell us some other places where we can find it. Over here, we can see that, let's see if we can find it. Here's a different form of it right here, and it's telling us how they translate it here. But now I'll have to go back and reopen everything here. Okay, so we're back here. So, okay, so that was interesting to see that the JPS did pretty well there. Let's look at one more thing, which is the Arabic, which is interesting. And we'll start here from the beginning. As soon, and I don't read the Arabic over here. This is Judeo-Arabic, so I don't really know how accurate it is, but nonetheless, it's interesting to see here. As soon as God, or as it is in Arabic, Allah created the heavens and the earth was deeply submerged, and darkness was on the surface of the depths, and Allah's wind would blow on the surface of the water. So that's actually quite a bit different than the what we have over here. So that's, and we could look over here, there's a few other ones that are kind of interesting. Which, if you look at this one, this is, I think, probably around the same time as Onkelos. If we want to really know about this, we can look it up. Let's do that, and let's see when it is from. Yeah, so this is, it looks like they're not really sure exactly, quite a bit of a date range there, but that's okay. So we can see this is just an alternative Aramaic translation, and here you see they've translated Bereshit as Behuchma, which is Chochma in Hebrew. So it's saying in wisdom. So that's going into Midrash, which we could find if we look back into, I think it would be in Rashi, but it's talking about sort of a different way that this can be read, the word Reshit, and how it can refer to Torah and things, and etc. That's not really what I wanted to focus on here. So now I'll read the Hebrew one last time, and then I'll read my own translation of it, and you can kind of look at the JPS version and compare what you hear from mine. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. Ve'haaretz haita tohu vabohu ve'choshech al penei tachom ve'ruach Elohim merahefet al penei hamayim. And I translated it as, in the beginning of God's shaping of the skies and the land was empty and chaotic, and darkness was spread over the face of the deep, and God's wind blew gently over the face of the water. So the main ways that I decided to shift from the JPS was to keep the original sort of older translation of in the beginning. We do have to presume a definite state here that's not necessarily in the text, but I think that the in the beginning sounds a bit nice and rings to the ear. However, I did regard this as a construct state according to Rashi and Ibn Ezra, and also regarded this as more of a participle form rather than a pa'al, perfect tense verb. I decided to go with translating this as God for a variety of reasons. It's a neutral term, and it seems to be that's what is being referred to here. The plural state is typically read as more indicating greatness and things like that. I decided to translate shamayim and aretz a little bit different. I think the words heaven and earth have a bit of a theological ring to them that I don't think is really implied in the original words. So I translated them as skies and land. And here we have them in the definite state, so we know that that's okay. And then we go to the second one, and the land was empty and chaotic. I have chaotic here for this. So we have the two words. So in here we can go down and see the meaning of it and look through. And so there's a few different options as to what it might mean. And I thought that chaos kind of rung true here. And you can see it's sort of used in other contexts that way. Excuse me. And so the other place where I departed from the GPS was I used different words here, as you can see, empty and chaotic, slightly different ring to those. I have and darkness, not with darkness, because there's no reason to translate the vav here as with over the face of the earth. And I have was spread over the face of the deep. And so I took off the surface of the deep here and added was spread, which comes from the some of the comments from Rashi, Ibn Ezra, and looking at the Targums. And I have was spread over the face of the deep, and they have was over the surface of the deep. And that's just more of a literal reading of this, which is in the construct state from panim, which means face, or faces more literally. So it's kind of a literal translation there. And then the last part I have, and they have, this is JPS, and a wind from God, and I have God's wind. I just liked the use of the more natural English possessive there. And then it says sweeping over the water, and I put blew gently over the face of the water. So we're relying more on the literal pene hamayim, which is upon the face of the water. And then I relied here on the word for blue, which comes from looking at the Targums. And that's how I did that. And so here in the word ruach is translated as wind, but it kind of has this, it's all wrapped up together in the sort of ancient view of spirit and life being tied up to the capacity for breathing. Anyway, that's my translation. I tried to combine both rabbinic and sort of these various translations from modern scholars that tried to get at the literal meaning of the words and using a very non literary style in the translation that kind of reads more action packed and tries to explain the tenses of the verbs in a way in English that makes them more close to how they read in Hebrew. So that's all I have for you today. Have a nice day.